This is a Weather Audio Broadcast Network and Hurricane City monthly special of the Barometer Bob Show. If you would like to talk about any weather subject during the show, give Barometer Bob a call anywhere nationwide and from the Caribbean on our toll-free number at 888-372-8890. Or you can email Bob at barometerbob@yahoo.com. Now, on to our monthly weather show with Barometer Bob.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barometer Bob, and this is the one-year anniversary show, the Barometer Bob Show. We've covered a lot of different items over the past year. We're not going to cover the past shows or anything. We have had a major severe weather event the last 2 weeks. The past couple of days it's calmed down, which is very, a lot of people are happy about that. We have, we're going to discuss the severe weather the last 2 weeks. We have our special guests tonight are Joe Sobel and Joe Bastardi from Accuweather.com. They will both be with us. After our first break, we're going to take a break in about 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes, and we will have them on afterwards. We have a number of questions to ask them, and toll-free number will be open. We have a giveaway, a one-year subscription to Weatherwise magazine. Now, Weatherwise magazine, if you don't know what Weatherwise magazine is, it's the only, that I know of, the only magazine that's publicated just for weather enthusiasts. It covers a lot of different articles. I probably should have it myself, but it covers a lot of different articles and photos, and it's basically a magazine about the weather. And you can find more information on Weatherwise magazine at www.weatherwise.org.
As always, so I'm ready.
Okay, Brian. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Jim. Well, that was a one-year subscription to Weatherwise magazine. Nicknamed Cat Daddy Brian from Texas. He's the winner tonight. We have our guests, Joe Sobel and Joe Bastardi from Accuweather.com. I'll give you a brief rundown of what these guys are about over at Accuweather. Joe Sobel, who's born in Brooklyn, New York, you can get this information at their weather site at Accuweather.com. I'm just going to briefly run down. These guys are well-known meteorologists here in the United States and probably worldwide. He does forensic meteorology for Accuweather, regular forecasts. He's a graduate from George W. Hewlett High School in Long Island. He attended University of Michigan, for which he received his B.S. in meteorology in 1967. Joe has also earned his M.S. and Ph.D. from Pennsylvania State University in 1970 and 76. And he's also a member of the American Meteorological Society since 1966 and holds an AMS in the seal of approval of television meteorology. Now, Joe Bastardi, he's another New Englander. He was born in Rhode Island. He moved to College Station, Texas. Wow, that really threw him for a loop there, going from the cold to the heat.
And it explains a lot about Joe. Also.
Yeah. Yep. You guys, you can get these things. You're still into wrestling, from what I understand.
No, drug-free competitive bodybuilder. I won the North American title last year.
There you go. Okay, he's got his B.S. in meteorology from Penn State also. So, welcome. I have just a couple of questions. Jim has a couple of questions. We'll open up the toll-free numbers to some callers, call in, say hi to you guys. The toll-free number is 1-888-372-8890, and after we're done with the interview, if you want to call in and say hi to the two Joes, Joe Sobel and Joe Bastardi, you'll be more than welcome to. My first question, though, and either one of you can answer the question, is the severe weather the past 2 weeks, since May 1st, there's been we've had a large number of severe weather events. What has caused this to occur?
Well, this is Joe Sobel. I'll give it a shot first, and then JB, you can take it. There are a couple of things that I also think we need, Bob, to keep into perspective here. As you were talking about at the opening of the show, this has been a record month in terms of number of tornadoes already, and we're only halfway through the month. But there are a couple of things that are going on. I think it certainly was an unusual and an incredible and an amazing event. And the week is certainly memorable. But, you also have to realize we've only been keeping the tornado statistics since, 1950?
1950.
Yeah, which is only 53 years, which in terms of meteorological history is just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
The atmosphere has been making weather for 3 billion years. And if you take a sample of 53 years, chances are you're not going to come close to documenting the extremes that the atmosphere can produce. And also realize that there are more people now. The population is much larger now than it was 53 years ago, and everybody's got a video camera now, as opposed to 50 years ago. And so the number of storms that we see and we document is just because of that going to be much higher, too.
And the media.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We hear about every single tree that's knocked down these days. So those are a couple of things that I think maybe skew the statistics a little bit. That having been said, it was an extraordinary week. It was an extraordinary event. I think due in part to a very strong jet stream, which of course is a necessary ingredient. Strong winds aloft, a necessary ingredient to organize severe thunderstorms. And I don't know how you feel, JB, but it probably is all related to the very cold early spring that we had.
Well, that's exactly right. If I may chime in here real quick, Joe, this pattern has been going on, the pattern of the split flow that we're in since mid-February. The first noticeable effect of what was going on is the fact that the El Nino, which was a factor, not the factor in the weather, over the last 2-3 months, because of some of the shifts that have gone on in the Atlantic and the seasonal variation, has developed itself enough so that we do have a separate southern stream. It started February 10th with the monster rainstorm into Los Angeles. Those of you who get the Accuweather.com pro site, have been following this along, this evolution of this pattern. So the southern jet continued. In the meantime, the feedback from the winter wasn't just going to go away. We had all the cold air kept dumping into Canada, persistent ridging over the northwest part of Canada, kept building up big high-pressure systems, and you'd see the atmosphere pulse. The first 2 weeks of March, very, very cold, warmed up dramatically in the mid part of the month, chilled back down across the north tremendously in early April. In the meantime, the stream keeps coming along, and you're getting an increased feedback of heat in the southern climates across Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico. The Atlantic's warmer than normal. So basically what you've done is you've pitted this stream that comes moving across, and you've got it very, very chilly in Canada, as Dr. Sobel was talking about, and the increasing warmth south of the jet stream across Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico and Florida. All you needed to do was get a couple of storms to what we call phase or combine enough of the jet to pull this thing north, and you get the severe weather outbreaks.
Oh, aren't you sorry you asked that one little question?
No, I'm not.
It sounds like he's doing one of his videos.
Well, they say all's fair in love and war, and in the weather is like a war. You don't go halfway in this business.
That's right.
Yeah, don't mess with Mother Nature.
Also realize when you battle the atmosphere, you can't win. All you can do is tie.
You try to get the tie.
Right.
You try to get the tie all the time.
We did an interview last summer with the folks from Dynamat and their Dynastorm Hurricane Modification project. What are your thoughts on this?
I really don't have a thought either way on the situation. In that, well, I don't believe that you should monkey around with Mother Nature because of the fact that what may be, someone may say, well, this is very destructive. We have to stop it here. Maybe the very thing that breaks a drought someplace else.
Right.
The other thing that worries me, too, is that the seeding experiments, the indications are that you've got to kill it completely. Because what can happen is if you're seeding a storm if you're seeding a storm in an area where the atmosphere is favorable for development, let's say you've got a storm that's moving through and you want to seed it before it reaches Florida, but you better kill the darn thing, because what you can actually do is you can through the process of condensation and getting the eye wall to break, and what they try to do is they try to the hurricane is a giant machine that's pulling everything in toward the center. They try to stop that by seeding around the storm so that the inner feeder bands aren't making it in. And the other theory is people, for instance, what if there's a drought in Texas? What if there's a tremendous drought in Texas and they need rain very, very badly? And a storm is projected to hit Florida, go up into the Florida Panhandle, and then come west along the Gulf Coast as a dying tropical storm. It could bring a lot of rain to Texas. All right? Well, you're going to have people in Texas saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on over here that you may have destroyed the thing that may have saved us? So I believe, and Dr. Sobel might know something about this, there was a big fight going on between Washington and Idaho about seeding stuff, wasn't it, Joe?
Well, yeah, there was. You can look at these kinds of issues, seeding of either individual clouds or systems like hurricanes intellectually, and say that theoretically this is something we could do. Then you've got to look at the legal implications of it. And like Joe was saying, one man's balloon is another man's bust. And who's got the right to control the outcome? The other way to look at it, though, is practically, is the amount of material that would be necessary to break up or modify a hurricane is just huge. I mean, the amount of energy that hurricanes produce within an hour is such a huge amount that to think that we could significantly alter that, I think, is a little bit unreasonable, to be kind.
Well, their argument was that we presented the same question that Joe B. just mentioned about the rain for Texas if it's heading that direction. Their argument was they just want to lower the winds, that it's not going to affect the amount of rainfall.
Yeah, but they have no way of knowing absolutely no way of knowing what the effect of what they're doing is going to be.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing is, too, that one of the guys when my dad was working in Atlantic City, the guy by the name of Bill Coffey is one of these old, God rest his soul, he's a Navy forecaster, typhoon forecaster in World War II. And he used to always say the thing he had against seeding is that it's almost like a blanket on a fire. If you throw it on fast enough, maybe you kill the fire. But if you're throwing it on too slow, you might just feed the darn thing.
Yeah.
There's releases of energy, there's interactions that we may or may not know about, and so that's a tough call. That's a tough call.
And as litigious as we are in this country and so forth, any result, favorable or unfavorable, somebody's going to come after you.
Right. You're still going to have the low pressure circulation in place also. That's
Yeah, but someone may argue, well, because you seeded it, you kept it from moving faster, and it sat over the area and flooded somebody. I mean, the whole thing got a bad name initially with what happened with the Savannah hurricane. I believe back in '49 or '48. Thing was stalled offshore. They seeded it, turned around and hit Savannah from the east.
And whether or not the seeding that they did had anything whatsoever to do with it is completely impossible to tell.
But Nimble, Dr. Sobel, his nickname's Nimble over here. You know that no matter what happens, there's a lawyer sitting up in Michigan ready to...
Yep.
Or not from Michigan, it may be someplace else. I don't know.
How about Philadelphia?
Hey, Jim, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. You guys are on a lot of radio stations around the country. You're on television. I know you're on MSNBC.
Right.
Do you have any plans in the future? I'm not sure how much you have to do with the decision-making at Accuweather, but do you have any plans to have a television station?
You mean a network of our own?
Yeah, on a cable channel, like the Weather Channel.
Well, I think that's always...
Who?
The what?
The what?
I'm sorry, we're not familiar with that concept.
The Weather Reporting Channel. Okay.
sure. That's always something that's in the back of our minds and being considered and so forth. You never know where that'll go.
They were doing it, but they realized they'd have to build a cage for me and put a leash around me.
Yeah. Well, you'd be more entertaining, that's for sure.
Well, the most entertainment's one thing. Accuracy, you have to be accurate before you're entertaining, and you have to. People ask me how accurate is Accuweather. I said, well, we started with one client. We got 18,000 now, and they all have to pay us. They don't get it for free, so we must be doing something right. But
and we certainly invite all of your listeners to visit Accuweather.com. Both our free site and our professional site. The professional site has, of course, Joe Bastardi's column and our special point-counterpoint video presentation. Mostly with Joe Bastardi and Ken Reeves, although every now and then I'll pinch hit as well, in which we discuss all of the kinds of issues and so forth. And
the big thing too is that I really believe that we try to forecast the weather. I mean, we're out there. Sometimes some of you folks familiar with our columns and stuff. No, we're talking about stuff 2 weeks away. Not just, oh, here it is, it's happening. Let me explain to you why it's happening. We like to take the challenge of the weather the best we can, rather than just hindcasting it or nowcasting it. Although that is important, I'm not saying it's not important.
Well, to get an extended outlook on what's going to happen, you're able to tweak your forecast as the period gets closer too. So.
Well, what you want to do is it's like this. It's like if you're driving down the street, you got to take an exit. Maybe 10, 15 miles away. You should be familiar with the road. You shouldn't be sitting there going, oh, where'd that exit come? What's that? Right? So
that's how they drive in New Jersey, though.
And a lot of weather forecasting is like that today. Stuff. But you do compete in this business.
If you are a regular reader of Joe Bastardi's column, you'll know that Joe is not afraid of speaking his mind and going out there on a limb and let you know what his opinion is.
But the thing is this, and Dr. Sobel will tell you, I have bags under my eyes every day because I'm studying this stuff constantly. Also, in this office, it's such a wonderful dynamic. It reminds me, when I wrestled in college, it's so much like, the top people in our office is so much like a wrestling team in that there's inter-office competition in a way that we try to excel against each other. It's almost like the 150-pounder wants to outdo what the 142-pounder did. A 42-pounder steps on, pins the guy in 3 minutes. The guy coming behind him wants to pin him in 2 minutes and 55 seconds. And what happens is it ups the level of intensity in the office.
Right.
So the forecasts reflect that, and that's why we went from one client to 18,000 clients. Right. Dr. Sobel's an unbeaten world champion over there.
Yeah.
The WWF, the World Weather Federation.
At least when it comes to beating Mr. Ken Reeves with our over-under bet.
But you got to admit, there's probably a different level of intensity with you guys during the hurricane season, correct?
Well, there's the hurricane season, and we turn up the intensity, but the severe storm season is the same. The winter season is the same. When it comes to the wild and wonderful, wacky world of weather, there's always something interesting and intense going on. So, each season has its own characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
With me, on a personal level, it never stops. Me, it's like what happened, what happened 2, 3, 4 days ago, I no longer take solace in it. Go to the next fight. It's right there. I know it. Is it going to rain in Los Angeles? Is it going to be warmer than normal in Minnesota? Is it going to be drier than normal on the plains? It's one thing after another, and it's almost like it's gotten bizarre with me. I don't know. I just quit fighting the whole thing. So I'm fascinated with it all the time. Right now I'm sleeping less than normal because I'm putting together our company's hurricane forecast, and we've had enough success over the years. We're starting to draw attention from a lot of people, and now the problem is you can't be wrong or you can't be way off, because when people start looking at you, you could have 5 great forecasts right in a row, and it's the one bad one will ruin everything you did before.
Well, so what have you done for me lately?
Well, it's not easy doing forecasts. I mean, I do my own, and it's not easy. I mean, and I have a limited time basis too. So
yeah, well, that's what Mark Twain once said. He said forecasting can be difficult, especially when it pertains to the future.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys used to do a live broadcast like we're doing tonight. What happened with that?
Shoot the Breeze?
Yes, there was a program called Shoot the Breeze, and it's just kind of in the background now. We're thinking about some things we want to do a little differently and tweaking it a little bit. We hope to bring it back before too much longer.
This was forwarded to me from Hurricane Mike from Mike's Hurricane Tracking,
Right.
and it's about sending 3 C-130 Hurricane Hunters to Guam for flying recon missions in the Northwest Pacific.
Yeah.
And how will this affect the recon flights in the Atlantic Basin this season?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think one good way to one great way to learn about hurricanes is to learn about typhoons. That's what Dr. Kerr, maybe they're trying to do some research out there, and maybe that's why they're over there. But I don't think that they'd, even though we may be into a "we are the world, we are the people" type thing, I don't think they would sacrifice what goes all on the.
Yeah, I would hope that the whole funding budgets and so forth for any flights necessary into the Atlantic Basin would not be affected, but I certainly don't know that for sure.
Right now the email, it said 3 planes and 6 crews, and in the email it said 3 fewer aircraft for Atlantic recons. So it's possible there may only be 12 hourly fixes instead of 6. Now, we know that NOAA has P3s at MacDill, so, I was discussing this with Hurricane Mike, and I wanted to find out if you guys had heard anything on it. All right, well...
We don't know where it's...
That kind of leads me into the question I was going to ask you next, is I've heard this in some message forums on the internet that you guys would like to privatize weather in the nation. Instead of having the National Weather Service allow it to be privatized. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Well, the vast majority of the American public today gets its weather information from the private sector. The vast majority of people, either from radio, television, newspaper, cable, or what have you. So we feel that that's just an evolution in which, in the direction in which things are going today anyway.
I think that let me just say, I'm in love with our country. I love the free system. I think the free system weeds out the weak and promotes the strong, all right, as far as this business goes. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to compete. I don't think anybody in this office is afraid. So what happens is this. I think to get the best forecast, once again, when there's something on the line, Joe Sobel, myself, anybody in here, if we're wrong, we get fired. We don't eat. We don't. The raises don't come. All right. So the fact is that there's added incentive in the private sector besides the love of weather, and that may or may not have something to do with the whole thing. But it's interesting that you brought that question up because you see, I feel bad for Dr. Gray. All right, the guy has busted his behind in doing what he's done. He set the table, and everybody's just.
We'll be right back with part 2 of the Barometer Bob Show right after these messages.
Barometer Bob.
Now on to part 2 of the Barometer Bob Show from May 14th, 2003. Interview with Accuweather's Joe Bastardi and Joe Sobel.
Okay, see you later, right? Why? Because there's funding going in other places,
right?
All right, that into the government, where here's this guy that has all this vast knowledge, and he's just sitting there left holding the bag. So, you could go around about this. You notice what's going on, too. Since you asked the question, I'm going to give my opinion. There's warnings and watches for everything. Frost warning, wind warning, whatever, right? And what happens is us, we will be in situations, and Dr. Sobel will tell you this, although he doesn't fly off the handle like I do. We will be telling someone heavy rain is coming for 3 days, and all of a sudden someone wakes up and issues a flash flood watch, and it's like, oh, well, now it's official, right? Well, wait a minute. You know, someone was saying it 3 days ago. Why does the air of officiality go to some other place?
Well, yeah, but on the flip side of that, what happens if you produce a warning for a particular area?
I'm not going to warn anybody about anything. I'm going to give them the weather forecast.
Oh, okay. So you're saying they shouldn't need any warnings?
Yeah.
The idea of there being, and I think we're getting into this issue of one official voice when it comes to weather of any kind, whether it's there should only be one voice issuing fog advisories, or there should be only one voice issuing a hurricane warning. I liken that to a medical situation. If you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you you've got a life-threatening condition of some kind or another, if you're smart, you're not going to just take that one doctor's opinion. You're going to go out and get a second opinion, a third opinion, try to get yourself as educated as you possibly can, and then make the best decision that you can based on all of the available information.
That's exactly
and
right.
weather is the same thing.
But what about if a tornado pops up all of a sudden?
I have. Let me say something. I am not running down a situation like that. The other thing is too, is that those guys that work at severe store. I know a couple of those guys out there. They're fanatical. They will work 22-hour days without batting an eyelash. Right? It's not an 8-hour day to them. Okay, and it is rare when they get caught. They are generally, if they're going to get caught, they'll get caught overdoing something rather than underdoing something. But Joe and I both worked the Texas coast the morning of Allison. Right, Joe?
Yep.
Pay no attention to the large, swirling, massive clouds east of Corpus Christi. No development. I mean, okay, come on.
And at the same time, we're telling people there's potential for flooding rain.
And the loop and the redevelopment, how is it that one guy sees nothing and Stacey Stewart walks in, and he's got to issue storm warnings on Lake Pontchartrain when Allison was waltzing through there with 70-mile-an-hour winds on its path along the Louisiana coast.
Well, now the global models initiated Allison really well. I mean, even the MRF 10 days out had Allison.
No, wait. Hold on a second. The MRF will have a storm. Yeah, listen.
We know the MRF.
If we're going to start doing that,
that's why the changes are occurring.
For all the MRFs that come out with big storms, all right, like, they pulled the nonsense and the MRF for the 93 storm. It had a 996 low south of Hatteras 5 days away, and they say, see, what a great verification that was, right? Well, the darn thing was 961, all right, and they'll argue that, the Europeans' position was off, even though it had the 961 low off Washington. Look, the 961 low verified near Hatteras, so the 996 gets the verification. There's certain things. I've watched that model for years, all right, and it's got immense weaknesses with the handoff from the southern branch and the northern branch. It will blow up storms that aren't there, all right? It will constantly jump systems eastward towards its heat feedback. We see it do that all the time. I mean, let's remember, for instance, what was the name of the storm several years ago? It wound up hitting Florida. I think it was Gabrielle, the one where they had hurricane warnings on the Texas coast, and it was clear skies in Cameron, Louisiana, and they were trying to point the storm northwest into a place where the dew point was 51. I mean, it's all GFS. It's garbage in, garbage out with it. So I am not going to hear. I don't listen to that kind of thing where if someone points out that it had a 10:08 low or something 5 days away. Well, it does that dozens of times.
Yeah, I think the MRF predicted 42 of the last 6 hurricanes.
Yeah, how many times have you guys are in Florida? How many times over the last 20 years you see the stupid model drive a storm into Jacksonville?
Yep.
Right? How many big... Fred was going to Jacksonville. Andrew was going to Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville's been hit one time from the east in 400 years by a major hurricane. It was Dora in 64.
Right.
So
right.
These are the things that go on. So, I mean, it's all pattern recognition, and you use the computer as a tool. But when it comes down to Allison, the point of the matter is that we have clientele on the Texas coast. We have oil rigs in there. they're wondering why are you guys saying there's 45-mile-an-hour winds coming, and yet there's this statement. So it's a matter of not that the Hurricane Center can't, we're not saying put the Hurricane Center out of business. What we're saying is, look, there's plenty of rooms for second opinions, especially when you are directing it at a specific clientele, all right? And then the market will weed it out. If we're lousy, people aren't going to stick with us. They're not going to. Those oil rigs aren't going to listen to us, right?
Yeah, for hurricane coverage, I could see that. Again, I keep going back to that tornado incident that just happened in Oklahoma. Now, if you leave it up to the media, people will get warned, but will they know when it's on the ground if there's no chasers like out in the middle of nowhere?
Well, see, the chasers help. See, it is extremely interesting to me that the chasers, these tornado fanatics, okay, will work with the Weather Service as opposed to, despite our track record over the years with hurricane forecasting here, from Agnes in 72 to whatever, to just recently, okay, including skill scoring systems that we have that are beyond everybody else and we put out there publicly before, never once has there been any attempt at interaction with, say, hey, these guys might have a point, all right? But you see the Severe Storm Center interacting a lot of times with people that are doing that type of thing, right? I mean, you see it all the time. So you bring up it's an interesting dynamic that goes on with that particular agency and the weather people out there. I mean, they're tied in with the TV stations, to an extent out there. So that will.
Well, there's no doubt the storm trackers provide valuable input and invaluable input, and undoubtedly saved many lives. That's what's incredible about this tornado outbreak that occurred last week. The small number of fatalities. I mean, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling given the situation and people knew that and kind of stuff.
We're supposed to have a better warning system now, but my question, we had the giveaway for the show, and my question was, what month had the highest tornadoes in what year? June of 1992. There was only one death for the entire year, but we had 399 tornadoes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for the 1 month, and that's the strangest thing.
Also realize that these days, going back to what we talked about before with the notification and the handheld cameras and so forth, every tree blow down now counts as a tornado.
Right.
And every F0, a lot of things that before would have never been calculated and included in the tornado statistics are now being included.
Yeah, and everybody thinks it was a tornado. Do you... now, you have your subscription service. Last year, a lot of your videos were free. This year, there's not going to be any free videos for... I know Joe Bastardi does the Tropical Update every morning, I believe.
Correct.
So there's not going to be any more free video?
Oh, it was meant to... I mean, it's basically, it costs someone 35 cents a day. And I'd like to think I'm worth 35 cents a day on those videos, but if I'm not, then the market shields it. So it's a 6 of this, half dozen of that with that.
Right.
So.
Well, let me ask you.
This is a commercial corporation. If we don't have any income, we can't feed our family.
Well, let me ask you this: is there a possibility? Because I know a lot of the people that either listen to this broadcast or the people that I've talked to, and I know the people that Bob have talked to, don't have a lot of money. I mean, they're on dial-up connections. They can't afford broadband, things like that. So for them to pay a subscription, it kills them. So, okay, we have a telephone call here. Let's see if you can hear these people. Go ahead, caller. Caller.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Go ahead.
Joe and Bob and Jim, how you all doing?
Good. We're having fun.
That's good. I'm calling from Staunton, Illinois, and I'm a great fan of Joe Bastardi and his pattern forecasting. He's taught me a lot. Excuse me.
I appreciate that.
Telephone man from Staunton, Illinois. I don't know if he remembers me, Joe.
I took a couple of emails that come in there.
Yeah, that's me. And,
I appreciate your kind comments.
And I am a subscriber, and I'm on the pro site. And I've learned a lot from you guys and Bob and Jim, and this is a good media coverage over the internet. And I think it's pretty neat you guys are on there, and that's probably the only thing I wanted to ask and make a comment. Oh, I do have a comment. Just a question. Your video segment, it just changed recently, and I kind of missed that 24 or the 48-hour with Joe Sobel. And are you reducing your staff as far as the commentators or the meteorologists that come on and explain the weather, or what?
Well, we did cut down on the number of streaming videos that we were doing and so forth. Just a matter of reconsolidating some schedules and trying to do things as efficiently and effectively as we can. Again, Accuweather is a commercial weather corporation, and we work within the entire economic framework of the United States and the world, and we've got to do what we feel is necessary to be as efficient and as profitable as we can.
I think a lot of the video stuff is snowball rolling down the hill kind of thing. You got to see what's going to pack and start rolling, rather than maybe what happened was with the internet boom and all this the technology came and rolling on so many products. And what we're trying to do now is say, okay, this is relatively successful, has some market demand. Let's try to go there, and then we'll branch out and maybe see if this is. It's almost like we're exploring new territory here with this kind of situation.
Well, absolutely. This is new technology. We're kind of making it up as we go along. And as Joe Bastard said, we've got to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and then try to find a path that's going to be the best.
When I was 3 years old, my mom and dad had to keep an eye on me because I was constantly staring at the sun, looking at the clouds and the sun. And it's so funny because I can remember arguing with my dad in 1960 about a storm. He was just telling people, these are just snowflakes, don't worry about it. I said, no, it's a major snowstorm. I can remember it like it's yesterday. And it's so funny because my little boy, Garrett, he's a thunderstorm fanatic, right? And he's been arguing since he was 4 that any cumulus cloud he sees is going to grow into a thunderstorm. I remember one time getting on the phone, and this was about 2 years ago, he goes, Grandpa, he's telling my dad, he goes, Grandpa, we are having an extremely severe thunderstorm here. And there's a little pause, and you hear him say, no, not severe, extremely severe, like that. It is something that runs in the blood.
There's no doubt about it. I think a lot of us that wind up going into weather and meteorology have always been obsessed with it from day one. And it's a genetic defect, actually.
I think it is a defect. It's funny because I think there are two things my dad wanted me to be when I was young, and he got one of them. He nurtured that meteorologist, but I'm not Rocky Marciano. Every Italian from New England thinks back in the 50s and 60s thought their kid was going to be the next Rocky Marciano, but that didn't happen.
Well, I think Accuweather really does have a good core of meteorologists and a good product, and I like some of your graphics, and Bob's got a good show here, and you guys got a good show going, and I just want to say best wishes to you guys, and keep up the good work.
Okay, John.
We appreciate that very much.
Just remember something. None of those forecasts I made before count. They'll count as the next forecast tomorrow, right?
All right.
You got to keep that attitude.
Okay, John.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
All right, that was our first caller of the evening to Joe Bastardi and Joe Sobel from Accuweather. It's currently 9:06 Eastern Time. You're listening to the Barometer Bob Show, 1 year anniversary. 12 months doing this, Bob.
Yeah, I know. It's been 12 whole months. Next month is the 13th.
Hey, just curious, how many people work at Accuweather?
Total staff is over 300, and we have about 75 full-time degreed meteorologists.
Wow.
And we're the second biggest tourist trap next to Joe Paterno's house up here.
Yeah.
The two places you stop by when you come up here, everybody drives by Joe's house, and then they drive by Accuweather.
He's just another Joe.
So how do you decide who does the radio forecast and who does the television, and how do they divide all that up?
Well, we have a very extensive training program that new forecasters, when they come in, get involved in. That involves broadcast training and, of course, forecast training and so forth. And we try we try to fit forecasters into the niche that they're most interested in, and that we judge them to be the most talented in as well. We also don't work rotating shifts here. We try to find the hours and the parts of the country and the kinds of forecasting that people enjoy the most, and that people are the best at, and put them into that particular shift, and don't rotate them around from days to nights back and forth.
All right, that makes life difficult too.
Rotating, you mean?
Yeah, rotating. Yeah, you can't schedule anything. You can't really have a life with your family rotating a shift.
You never know whether you're going to be sleeping at night or up at night.
Wow. Well, what if hurricane's coming and you get on MSNBC? How does that come about? Do they just call you and say we need your services? Or?
No, we work for MSNBC on an as-needed basis. And so that if there is a weather story and if there's a big weather event going on, they may use us every hour, whereas in a quiet weather pattern, they won't use us at all. Although I should say now, there's a new program on in the 5 o'clock hour from 5 to 6 a.m. In which the lovely and talented Lisa Moldovan, one of our young and upcoming meteorologists, will be on every day. I think it's at about 5:15 and 5:45 Eastern time every morning.
It's funny with MS. You couldn't force me on there unless there's hurricanes or long range forecasting. Then you can't get me off there, because that's what it's kind of funny. Like we've matched people up to their strengths and what goes with them. I get a little bit antsy because I'll say there, Bernie, like I say, Bernie Raynos, are a guy that is the go-between between us and MSNBC, said we should be talking to these people about something in the Gulf a week away, and to give them a head start. In fact, if you watched last year, even as Isidore was going in the Gulf, I made sure that people knew Lily was going to be following it. If you watched and Gustav, we were talking about Gustav. Even as the storm before Gustav was hitting the Gulf Coast there, we were talking about the development of Gustav was going to develop this week north of Puerto Rico, try to hit the mid-Atlantic coast. We put all these graphics up. So we're trying to, get a little bit of a jump on that kind of thing. But the good-looking guys like Dr. Sobel are the day-to-day guys.
I see him a lot more.
We have faces for radio for the most part.
Same here. I have a face that belongs on a stamp. In fact, I think someone stamped on my face, which is pretty close to true in some cases.
Hey, Joe Bastardi, I like your the way you will pick a cloud pattern on the satellite images, and like it'll be a horse head or something, and you'll put your crayon around it, your teleprompter. You'll draw a picture of something. It looks like a horse or something. The clouds are in a certain pattern.
They do. Sometimes the good Lord above's horsing around, he shows the clouds like that. So
that kills me.
Well, I hope it doesn't kill you, but it depends on my mood. See, I'm meteorologically bipolar. Basically, the more revved up the weather gets, the better. I'll come into work, everybody's like, "Oh, this pattern. Oh, man, look at this going on." People are saying we're gonna have to work, and I'm like, "Yeah, bring it on." It's like that because I just get fired up. I mean, if there's snow coming to State College, I won't sleep. If there's a tropical wave I think it's going to develop, I'm up looking at it. I mean, how stupid is that? Something's 800 miles east of Barbados, and I'm up worried about it. And I can't. I might as well not fight it anymore.
I sense that.
Yeah, it's sensitive to me. So, no.
Well, are you going to narrow it down to where they're going to hit?
Or? We always do. We always try our best. So we actually put that. We've always done that, and we score it at the end, and we give ourselves grades. And the only place we did poorly last year was New England. I mean, we have intensity ratings that we tell you, this is how we're going to score this, folks, before. This will say whether we're wrong or we're right, and then we will score. We do that all the time. We do that with our monthly forecasts and stuff because I believe you have to be accurate and honest in this field. Now, no one's saying perfect. There's a difference between perfect and being right and being perfect, but there's a difference between right and wrong, all right? So what happens is, over the years, to prove our point with these hurricane forecasts out, we are developing more and more advanced scoring schemes to make it more and more clear as to what the exact message is. Not a probability of 10% above the normal probability that 7 to 10 storms will occur in the Atlantic. I mean, that is not the way we try to get actual parameters of the weather and label them the best we can, and then say, okay, if you don't like it, if you think it's wrong, don't buy it. If you think we got something there, then you come talk to us. I mean, you've got to get yourself out there and try to put your message across the best you can. When you're uncertain, you say you're uncertain, but otherwise try to put the message across. And there's by no means am I saying I'm perfect. I am saying, though, that I will research the daylights, I'll bulldog the thing into the ground, and then come up with the best shot and keep you updated the best I can. Last year, for those of you who got on the site, we had 5 landfalling storms last year. That happens once every 12 years. That was our forecast. A 1 in 12 hurricane landfalling season, okay? We are concerned with landfalls on the coastline. That's what we're concerned with, okay?
Yeah.
And when everybody poo-pooed the hurricane season in August, started, it's all over, everybody's lowering numbers, we stayed with that forecast. What actually happened was we had 8 landfalling storms last year, all right? So it actually went over our forecast. I took error points on the other side of what everybody else was saying. You see what I'm saying about that? That everybody lowered their numbers. I stood with ours, which was a high number in the first place, right? It's not every year you have five storms make landfall in the United States. And people say, well, this storm wasn't a hurricane or whatever. Well, Gustav was a 982 tropical storm, right? I've seen the hurricane center upgrade things at 996 to hurricanes, okay? And you get this stuff back and forth. Was it a hurricane? Wasn't it a hurricane or whatever? But the point is that in the face of everybody poo-pooing the season, we stood our ground based on what we thought, and it came out pretty good overall.
It was a tropical system that made landfall.
Yeah, well, I'm going to really avoid the whole hassle of, I got a big argument one time with Stacey Stewart over Gabrielle. To say, Bob Case, who used to work at the Hurricane Center, had a very, very interesting point that storms that are deepening, you jack it up a category. Now, somehow or the other, the Hurricane Center is going the opposite way now. Stacey told me, I was friends with him, and we emailed each other back and forth. He says, well, the latest research shows the opposite. And see, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. The physics of the situation, when a storm is weakening, it's because the atmosphere is becoming more and more stable in the environment of the storm, so there's less chance for the vertical transport of strong wind down to the surface. I believe when storms are deepening, and in their deepening mode, there's no lag, there's no 6-hour lag time. What's happening is the strong winds are coming in and forcing the deepening, so it's a dog wagging the tail thing. So all of a sudden now we've got, this new information says this. I need every single time.
Right.
Well, how about when you guys obviously watch everything that goes on. How about when they do find it and there's no response, right. in the bulletin?
Yeah.
Doesn't that say what's going on?
I've never understood how they can classify something based on one cell in the eye wall. I mean,
I don't know. No, the point is it seems to me, and Joe, I'm sure will agree with this. It seems to me to be no objective standard. Look, I've got an objective standard.
Well, there's a lot of politics that gets involved, and there's a lot of going in one direction versus another in terms of the point that the alleged phrase, the path of least regret, and what politically is the best way to go. And I think Joe is trying to say we need to be more objective. We need to go back to our fundamentals and our objective tools, and,
that's right.
And I think that's correct.
I've got a very easy way to say if you want to name something. All right, I put it on my website 100 times. Then the problem is, then everybody would know what the standards is. And if you get 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 the criteria, name it and be done with it, and then it'd be easy.
And this business also of naming subtropical storms. It's a whole another Pandora's box.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
Well, I listen. Here's the thing. When you get a warm core system, you have different energetics near the center that will force strong winds to gather near the core. All right, and because of that, I like the idea of naming them. All right, but not calling them subtropical storms. just call them darn storms, will you? If they're causing gale force winds in one quadrant and they're over, give me the water temperature you want. You want it 80, you want it 77, you want it 76, whatever. If you get 2 out of 3 of the categories, name the storm.
Well,
okay?
I can understand why they name them subtropical, because they want mariners to understand that the storms are far away from the center and they should be prepared for.
Well, that's not what happened with Karen. Look what the heck happened with Karen. What a fiasco that was.
Yeah.
The thing blasted Bermuda with 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts. The dew point was 73. Right. There was a spike. The storm's moving away. They fly in, find the warm core, call it a subtropical storm. Then they upgrade it. It's what do you call it? Still moving away. Upgrade it to a hurricane and say, folks on Bermuda should be alert for latest bill. The thing's moving away at 15 miles an hour, and they're warning Bermuda.
No, they had a hurricane. They had a hurricane there.
No, of course they had a hurricane. Of course, just like in '82, that thing that came across Tampa and killed 16 people up at Hatteras was a hurricane in June of '82, right? The thing that smashed the Mid-Atlantic coast in January of '92 from the east at Ocean City, Maryland, where they had 102-mile-an-hour wind gusts out of the east and a pressure of 2865. It was the day the Redskins played the Falcons in a playoff game. That thing was warm core with a vivid eye and everything else.
Well, that's what will be interesting this winter. The thing is about naming subtropical storms or what have you is that there has to be some objective and consistency involved here. Because if we're going to start naming, and I don't personally have any problem with naming them, we could argue whether we should name them subtropical or just name storms. But let's do it in January and December when we have similar kinds of storms all the time.
But see, I don't agree with you, Joe, that we have them all the time. I'm talking about the ones where the center has an open. The reason why there is an open eye in the center is because there's strong subsidence going on, and the center is visibly warmer than the outlying area, and that creates different type of energetics that feeds a banding feature. Like the President's Day storm would have been one in '79 that could have gotten named. Okay, where it developed a well-developed.
Well, but I think I agree with you, Joe.
Right,
that not every nor'easter that develops is going to have the characteristics to fit whatever criteria you want to develop. We've got to be consistent.
I don't think they would be as common as we might think. I think it may be a winter one would get named once every 5 years, and would be based on a relationship between the inside center and outside. In fact, the first recon they ever flew in to a winter storm was in February '68, and they found a warm core in that darn thing off Atlantic City that particular year. It was a February '68 storm. Went to 968 millibars. The stupid thing didn't dump a flake of snow at Atlantic City because, like a hurricane, it pulled everything in toward its center. You know, the first time they spotted an eye, or the Tyros back then, and so these I call them rogue storms. See, I avoid the whole controversy, guys. I'm a man of peace and love.
Well, the fact of the matter is they do occur during the winter time.
Yes, they do.
And if they do occur during the winter time, they should be consistently named, just like if they were to occur in June or July.
And you know something, and Dr. Sobel, the reason why Dr. Sobel has a great point is because they also cause the same. You see, nor'easters are one thing where the wind is increasing and you're getting fetch type, wave action. When you have these things, these rogue storms with their warm cores developing at the center, they not only create fetch, but they create swell, just like hurricanes, right? It's like a plunger because there's a different kind of wave action where you have a steady increase of wind toward the center in a crescendo that gradually comes up and then reaches a peak. You get a different kind of wave action and a much more severe type situation. It's almost like a plunger in the ocean, all right? So because of that, there is good reason for what the good doctor is saying here. And again, I would look at the determination of the center as a center 5-6 Celsius warmer than everywhere in the surrounding core, like it would be a hurricane.
Well, Dr. Sobel, so are you suggesting that we should have one list of names for both winter and hurricane season, or a separate list of names for nor'easters?
Well, we've had storms all times of the year.
I don't. That's an interesting question, and I think we need to talk about it and think about it. But whether we use a separate name list or two separate lists of names, the point is we need to be consistent about what we're doing, and it needs to be regardless of what season we're in.
So you would have warnings and watches, and you track it, give coordinates and everything, just like a tropical system?
Well, the thing is that if it has an eye, you can track it. That's the thing. If it doesn't have an eye, then it doesn't have a warm core, so the chances are it doesn't have the winds near the center.
I appreciate it, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, who walked in?
Well, you're very welcome. Good luck. It's a great program.
Great job over there.
It's a great program, and hopefully we'll be in touch.
We'll love you, and we'll see you in Vegas.
And drop me an email sometime.
You guys are great.
Appreciate
Keep
it.
up the good work over there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, guys.
Well, good deal.
Bye.